My guest today really needs no introduction, but of course he's a phenomenally accomplished actor, writer, all kinds of mediums, man about town, international celebrity, I think is what we were talking about right backstage. So please help me welcome Alan Cumming. Oh, I'm sorry. I actually, first of all, need to apologize because I was supposed to say top international celebrity, and I bought. Sorry about that, Alan. I hope that's all right. You know, I think my first thing actually is I understand this is not your first trip to Savannah. Is that right? You've been here before.
I've been a few times to the film festival. I'm actually on, I think, the advisory panel, although I don't give
no
much
big deal.
advice. But so I haven't been for ages, but I used to come a lot, and then there's been a spell where I guess I was not able to. So I came this time.
Excellent. You're talking to some students tomorrow?
Talking with students tomorrow. Yeah, I think I love just, you know, I first came in the early 2000s, so seeing SCAD sort of, you know, revitalize / take over Savannah has been very exciting. And also, like, I was at the TV festival in Atlanta that they do last year, I think. And so, is it Hong Kong as well? You have a place in Hong Kong? Still haven't been invited there, but, you know.
SCAD is global, just like you.
SCAD is top international celebrity itself.
Yeah. Also a top international celebrity. So I want to kind of start by just going way back to the beginning. So you grew up in Scotland, and in a pretty rural environment, right? On a kind of estate. You probably did not imagine as a child that your path would lead you here exactly. What are your kind of big defining memories of your younger years that sort of teed you up to have the incredible career that you've had?
I don't think there's, I mean, I'm actually writing another book now, and I'm kind of writing about that. I just feel there's absolutely...
Another memoir?
Another memoir, yeah.
Wow. Alan's first memoir, Not My Father's Son, which was published in 2013, 2014?
14, I think.
Yeah. Is so excellent and so well worth reading.
Thanks.
If you haven't read it. It's incredibly, beautifully written.
Available in all places you buy books.
So you're doing another one?
So I'm doing another one, and I'm sort of really interested in the idea of how people's lives end up, you know, and because often people say to me, "Oh, you must be living your wildest dreams," and I'm like, "No, I'm not," because this was not my dream at all. This was not even in my mental periphery. So I feel, you know, I grew up on a tiny Scottish, well, not a massive Scottish country estate, but in the middle of nowhere. My class, my nationality, my circumstance, none of it makes sense that I would have the trajectory that I've had. So I'm really intrigued about what are the reasons that makes a life like this happen. And I think it's a lot to do with being open to things and just deciding to give something a go in all ways, you know, not just in my career, but in life. And so that's something I'm really sort of trying to work out. And also, what are the other things that usually would permit, or not permit, rather, something like this, a life like this happening?
Reading your first book, I got the sense that, you know, your parents, at least your father, didn't do much to kind of cultivate that sense of openness in you. Quite the opposite, in fact. But it sounds like your mother, who has the wonderful name of Mary Darling, was much better to that end in terms of helping to kind of, you know, allow you to have that kind of openness and expansiveness that's led you here.
I mean, I think actually the combo of them was more what it did, because like my dad was very abusive. In my book I talk a lot. It's quite, I mean, just FYI, it's a little disturbing. My father was, you know, very violent and an abusive man, and so I got sort of from my father that I was worthless, absolutely worthless, and from my mother that I was precious, and so I didn't believe either of them. And so I think in a way it gave me from a very early age, I knew that I had to make up my own mind about myself and about a lot of things. And I knew from a very early age that there was something wrong with my father. I knew that wasn't right, that behavior, the way he was treating all of us. So I think actually it's not necessarily that openness, but kind of an understanding at an early age of more the possibility of you know, adult things. And it wasn't good. I don't think a child should have to learn those things that early. But in a way, it kind of stood me in good stead in that you know, also for acting, I suppose, you have to kind of try and understand a room. You have to walk in and gauge the energy of where you are. And I had to do that a lot, definitely, with a you know, abusive, violent father.
In so many family systems like that, where it's not, you know, functional, it's easy to think, well, there must be something wrong with me. And it sounds like you know, saw clearly and rightly that it wasn't you, that there was something wrong with him. Did you have to kind of figure that out as you got older, or were you able to kind of move into adulthood, you know, with that sense? Because you are so confident, you know, or at least that's how it seems from the outside.
No, I'm pretty confident. I mean, but I think that's something that I had to work at it. I had to, you know, even though you understand that, even though you question, and as I grew up, I realized more and more that there weren't other people in the world like my dad, or there are, but for the most part, the people I was coming into contact with were not like that. But even so, like you grow up, and I still, one of the things that I want to also write about in my new book is about the fact that my last, well, it's not the last book, I've written some more in between, but Not My Father's Son, I talked a lot about the abuse and everything, and what was amazing about it was how much it helped so many people deal with their abuse issues or things they could never talk about, or needing to deal with something in their family. It's been really amazing, actually. Every day I get a tweet or some message about how someone has been changed by it, and that's been an amazing thing. But I think, especially in America, there's this sort of idea that when you talk about something like that, and if you are successful in your job and stuff, then in some way you have transcended it, and it's done, and you've conquered it. And I don't feel that at all. I feel like it's a constant thing in your life. In a way, writing my book, that book, made my father be much more present in my life than he ever was before. And actually, I feel that's how, as it should be. He's here on my terms now. But I feel it's like the thing with confidence, and about, even though I am confident, I still grapple with the fact that sometimes, you know, my father didn't love me, and he didn't think I was worth anything. And that's something that, even though I do feel like loved, and I do feel I'm worth something, that's still something that has to be dealt with in my, you know, life, and my therapy, and my cognizance. So I really want to, in this other book too, the new one, just talk about this idea that things don't go away. You just manage them better. You get more used to them, and you get better tools how to deal with them. And one of the best tools is by sharing it and talking about it, and letting other people understand that they are not alone, and by that, you know, you're not alone.
Absolutely. Do you feel like that those childhood experience kind of pushed you into wanting to be on stage and you know, wanting to act in the first place, or are they kind of two separate things?
I think they're separate. I mean, I'm slightly leery of the notion that having a tortured childhood makes you a great actor or a great artist. Right. Because I think I've checked, and Meryl Streep had a really nice childhood in New Jersey. So, but I do think that some of the things I had to learn, some of the traits I had to learn to deal with my father, were traits that were quite useful in acting. Like, as I said, gauging a room, monitoring your behavior in order to not make them get angry or explode. You know, so actually, sadly, those are traits that are useful. But I don't think that it was because of that I went into acting. And also, I mean, actually, I think, you know, we never went to the theater. We hardly ever went to the cinema. I became an actor really because I liked it, and it was also the first thing I was any good at. So I just like, and I still like, the process of playing, of just being someone else. And I just think I suppose I should be telling this to the students tomorrow more specifically, but I just think there's this over-mythologizing of acting in this country. And as you know, in all the things I've done, I just again and again and again I come back to the simpler it is, the more like child play it is, the better it is, and the more convincing it is.
Do you have kind of memories of your first time being on stage and feeling like, or your first time kind of acting and experiencing that sense of play and being like, this is where I belong, or feeling that call, and what were they?
Well, I remember doing like, you know, a play, like a school thing, a school Christmas thing when I was little. But the first main thing I did that I remember that feeling was a play that we didn't have a drama department at my school. But there was an English teacher who did sort of a drama club, and we did this play, and she said I should be in it, so I did. And I just remember thinking, it felt like, I joke about it, but it really was the first time I was good at anything. And so I was like, oh, I see what it's like when you're good at things and people like you, and you know, and also when you know you're good at something. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you do something and people tell you you're good and you think, not really, you know. But I actually genuinely realized it was something that I could do that other people couldn't. Because that's the other thing about acting. I think that, you know, for some people it's really easy because it's just like they can do it, like, you know, riding a unicycle or being double jointed. It's just one of those things you can do, you know what I mean? But other people it's harder, but I just think that there's still too much mythology about how you go about it. But I do remember that moment that I was sort of like, oh, so I stuck with it.
And how did you get from there to then being on stage it was first Scotland and then kind of London, West End, right?
Yeah. Well, I did a couple of plays at high school, and then there was a year between high school and drama school, and I was too young to be allowed to go to drama school or to go to university or anything. So I worked in this publishing house in Dundee, this Scottish publishing company, where I had to write the horoscopes for a newspaper. I did.
I bet you were really good at that.
I really was, actually, because I was very conscious of, you know, who might be reading it, and I was always thinking it would be an old lady with cats. That was my sort of image. And in the same way now, I think, or not so much now, but over the years, in terms of, like, you know, in my sort of activism work for LGBT rights and everything and marriage equality, I would always think, when I would do or say anything, I would always think, what will a little lesbian in Wisconsin make of this? And I don't know why. She was little, and she was from Wisconsin, and she was a lesbian. That was my kind of touchstone for how I should, you know, be careful about what I said and did. But so the old lady with the cats, I would always, for her, I would be sort of not very specific. I would say things like, you know, Saturn is returning. Maybe it wasn't. I didn't know. It was made up. So probably not a good time to clean out your closets. Things like that. I would never say things about love and all that stuff, and you know, because I thought that would be unfair. But anyway, so I did that for like a year and a bit, and then I was 17. I was old enough to go to drama school, so I applied to drama. And in that year, I did some plays with a local theatre group, you know, a little theatre club in my little town, and a few. And then I went to auditioned for drama school, and I got in Glasgow, in the Royal. It was called the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama. Now it's called the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. Because you know you're really old when your place where you went to college changes its name. Yeah. But I don't know if I didn't have a plan B. I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't got in, you know.
And then how did you go from there to Hollywood? Was there a first film role? That was in the UK, right?
Well, what happened was I started to do films. Like I was sort of theatre. I'd always sort of done, you know, bits and bobs of films and television and things. And I did a lot of stand-up comedy when I was at drama school, and just after I did a lot of things. But anyway, I started, you know, I moved to London. I kind of became a sort of little theatre star. I was, you know, I played Hamlet, blah blah blah. And then, actually, no, it was before that I played Hamlet. Anyway, I started doing some films because I was sort of, you know, I won an Olivier Award, stuff like that. And then because of that, I kind of got noticed, and I started to do some filmy things. And then a couple of years after that, I did a film, all sort of European films and BBC things. And because they used to have this thing called Euro puddings, that was where they would get a start.
Euro puddings?
Euro pudding.
Okay.
It was all these, like, when the EU they used to give money from different, I think they still do it. Different countries would give money, and they would make a film, and it would be 1 star from each country, you know what I mean? And it was called a Euro pudding, because it was just all these ingredients and it made no sense. So I did one, for example, with Bruno Gantz, who sadly just died, but he's in a film I think we're going to see tonight. Is that right? Yeah. And this French actress called Sandrine Bonnaire, and I was the British one. And that was the first feature film I did. But then, a couple of years after that, I did a movie that was shot in Ireland called Circle of Friends, and then it was shown, and that was the first time I think a film of mine had been shown in America, in cinemas anyway. And so I came to America to do the press thing for that. That was the first time I'd come to America. I was 30 years old. I had had a whole life in Britain. I would continue to have a life, had I stayed. And that was the first time I ever set foot in America. And I came, because it's so, I mean, actors hate me because people say, oh, you struggled all these years. What was the first thing you did when you came to New York? I was like, starred in a Broadway musical. And then and then you're like, was it hard for you to get jobs in Hollywood? I was like, no, I came and stayed at the Four Seasons Hotel to do a junket for a film I was in. So I'm kind of annoying in that way, but so because of that, I came, to do the press thing. And then the next year, another couple of films I'd done in Britain, one was a James Bond film and this film, Emma, with Gwyneth Paltrow. So it was a kind of an onslaught of me. And so then I started to get offered. Then I came in 1996, I came to LA, and I would come from meetings in between that. But then I did Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion was the first gig asp.
Let's get some applause for Romeo and Michelle, please.
So that was the first film. That was the first time I'd ever worked in America. Was to do that. I don't know why they asked. Still don't know why they offered. I mean, I was okay in it, but I mean, it makes no sense as well. I would never done an American film. I never played an American, and they give me this big part in a big studio picture.
They knew it was going to be a classic, and they wanted you to be part of it. Yeah.
But I mean, I really actually, even though I was such a newbie, I read all these scripts, because when you first arrive, you have to read everything and go and meet all these people. And that was the one script that stood out to me. It had some wit and all the trash that I was being asked to read, and I was just like, what's happening about that one? Can I and I had to go and meet all the people at Disney because nobody knew who I was. But it was sort of young blood. But that's really, I did pursue that film, but I was still shocked that they gave it to me.
And then it was a couple years after that you did the anniversary party, right? Which is
a few years, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Which was you co-wrote and directed with Jennifer Jason Leigh. What was the experience like to then kind of move into those roles of being, behind the camera? Of I'm sure you were writing along the way as well, but having mostly been front and center as an actor.
I'd done a couple of I'd done in Britain a couple of short films I directed and wrote. One I didn't direct. One I didn't write, but it was quite good. But this was the first feature film, and so I really enjoyed it. It was actually a great experience. I actually really advocate directing with another person, because my biggest, or one of my pet peeves is, I have a lot of pet peeves actually, but one of my pet peeves is the sort of cult of director as God that's happened in this country, especially over the last half century. So actually when there's, because I think the idea, directors seemingly aren't allowed to say, I don't know. Actually, what do you think? They always have to have an answer. We always have to say, what am I doing here? What's my motivation? I hate when actors say that. You think, your motivation is to not be such a, spineless twit. And just try and think something and do it. So I think that's cult of it, vaunting people up to be this sort of omnipotent thing is really not good for the whole process of making films. And when there's two of you, you have to actually discuss what you want to do about a shot or about a scene. And then the conversation is opened up and it becomes about everyone in the room. And I feel it's a much healthier, it should be a collaborative process. It's supposed to be. And many people pretend it is, but actually often it's not. It's just kind of people, someone telling you what to do. So I really liked it for that. And also, we wrote, this is a film it's about an anniversary party of a marriage that's not doing very well. And they've recently got back together. That's me and Jennifer Jason Leigh. And we have a party and all our friends come and, Gwyneth Paltrow's character brings ecstasy, as it was then. And we all take that and everything. And, hilarity ensues. Not really. But it was great because we wrote for all those people, all the actors in it, like Kevin Kline and Phoebe Cates and Parker Posey and, all those people.
Phenomenal cast.
So amazing. And we knew they were going to be in it, so we wrote for their voices. So often people say to me, oh, that film was improvised. And I am flattered, but it wasn't. There was one section we asked when they kind of toast us, we asked them to make up their things around a sort of structure. But mostly 95% of the movie was scripted. But if people think it's improvised, I think that's good writing. So, and then, and talking of which, we're actually doing, I just saw Jennifer the other day, and we're writing now a sequel, 20 years on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is so fun.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's just actually really fascinating to think what has happened to all these characters, these people that we made up. So and also what's happened to that marriage. And I think it's an interesting time, like, it was a very dysfunctional marriage. And I think now it's which was probably, it was a dysfunctional marriage that was doomed to failure, perhaps because of the constraints in society about how you have a marriage. And I think in the last 20 years, all that kind of stuff has changed and opened up. And I think actually marriage equality, gay marriage, is going to teach, hopefully, good lessons to straight people about how you can have a marriage that doesn't necessarily have to be this scary, if you ever touch another person in your life, it's over kind of thing. And the idea that you can be faithful you can be unfaithful to people in ways that have nothing to do with having sex with another person, but actually that there are stronger bonds than just this one that we've been told, this sort of Hollywood version of you meet someone, you fall in love, and you just have sex with no one else for the rest of your life. And we all know that doesn't work. That's not true. That doesn't happen. And so what that means is that it festers and makes people have, lie and deceit. And I actually, it's been interesting sort of exploring how their relationship now has changed, and it is actually a very successful relationship, but it's partly because there's more than just the two of them in it.
I'm really excited to see that movie. Yeah, I can't wait. And it's interesting that you kind of bring up the subject of marriage and the kind of shift around, the way we think about monogamy and, sexuality and gender and kind of all of these spaces in the 20 years since you made that movie. And you were really involved, you've been really, really involved in LGBTQ activism and marriage equality. Can you talk a little bit about, your sort of arc through that?
Well, it's nice to be a part of a sort of a movement that has actually had some success. It's actually achieved things. I think since I came to this country, there's been a huge change in rights, and obviously people can get married now, which is great. But I mean, it's still a struggle. For me, I just feel like the idea that you would wish someone not to have the same rights as you, or condone that, I just think is anathema to me. I just can't understand it. And so, and this is a country, there's a big difference, I think, in where I came from and my life now, in that there's no safety net here. Like, where I come from, there's always the idea that if something happens, we've got you. And there's not that here. And I was going to say there's no judgment, but there is a lot of judgment in that, and I don't think that's right. I think we should have a safety net for each other. But I think so much about being an American is about, if I can do it, you can do it too, and therefore why should I help you? And so I think that's partly, that's moved into all areas of society, including people's rights, If I've got these rights, you should get them too, why should I help you? And I think that's a big shift for a lot of people, to think that there must be a reason these people don't have rights. There must be a reason these people can't be married, and you have to convince me of that, instead of me just going, wow, that's stupid, you should be able to do what I do. So a lot has changed, and it's been great. And I feel like, for me, if I have, I have a platform, and also I think as a queer person, I'm quite non-scary to non-queer people. Do you know what I mean? I think I've always been sort of open about who I am, but I'm also like, I can go on, The Tonight Show and talk about this. And not...
Nobody here is scared, right? No, great.
Although I can be scary. So I think I have a voice and I have a platform, and I'm absolutely going to use it if I feel there's something that is not working. But and there's great strides have been made. But right now, the Supreme Court of this country is deciding, is masticating on whether or not it will say, which is something that the government of this country has asked it to do. Is the government is saying, can we have a law where we can fire people if they're LGBT or Q or whatever? Actually, that's not, the government is actively asking the Supreme Court to let them have a law to fire people just because of who they are. I can't believe that's happening in 2019. And I mean, fingers crossed, and I hear we won't hear the actual answer till next June. I don't know why it takes so long, but it's just shocking to me that that happens. There's 20-something states in this country right now where you can be fired for being gay or transgender. And there's been a huge spike in hate crimes since Donald Trump became president. Huge. So the number of trans women of color who've been murdered in this country is off the charts. So there's this, we're living in a time where I think we've got to be vigilant and not assume that because, people can get married, that everything's okay. It's not. There's a rhetoric, a daily rhetoric that persecutes people who are different. And it's not just LGBTQ people, it's obviously people who don't look like white people. It's immigrants, it's refugees, but it's also gay people and trans people. And I think we've got to don't rest on our laurels. That's all.
Very well said. It does sometimes feel as though we're backsliding, politically, but then in Hollywood there are really great new strides being made kind of all the time, and one of those was last year when you, with your show Instinct, became, I want to get this right, the first openly gay lead character on a network drama.
Yes.
Yes. So just to break that down, there have been queer characters in ensembles and there have been comedies, but like in the big kind of tentpole
and the
prime
show
time,
as well.
Yeah, right, yes, and a kind of procedural too.
Yeah, procedural, yeah.
In these big tentpole network dramas, the kind that everybody watches, whether they have HBO or not, the kinds that pull in big ratings. This was the first time that a gay character had been the lead, the star of the show, which is actually a really, really big deal. It was a huge thing. Representationally.
It was huge. Of course, they cancelled it. So we're not...
So we're not going to dwell on that too much, but
no,
milestone still, yeah.
I mean, I think actually, what I think is interesting about that was that the biggest sort of thing about it was that everyone was like, what? This hasn't happened before. I mean, actually,
right.
More than it actually happening was the fact that people couldn't believe it hadn't happened before, which is, because we have it on cable and things like that. But on a mainstream, network show, it never happened. And I think it was really good, even though we did 2 seasons. I think it was actually good in that basically, network dramas and network shows are basically just things to fill up the gaps between commercials, right? Yeah. They are. Yeah. And so basically what that meant was that executives can go, hey, we can have a gay person in the lead now and it won't make us lose any money. So, that's
a good precedent.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive thing. And and the other good thing was, like, I loved when I would go to places, I've just been filming a thing in Albuquerque, so I had to go to all these, you have to change lots of airports. And so I'd be in like Minneapolis or somewhere, and I'd be in the airport and people would go, oh, are you and Andy going to adopt your baby? We really hope you are, and things like that. And it was so sweet. And then I remember being in Dallas doing a charity event, and these gay men, a couple, saying to me, how much it meant to them to see a gay couple on TV on a network thing. I mean, things like that you, in our sort of rarefied world, and I'm sure people here know, I'm sure some of your best friends are gay, but I think it's easy to forget that those messages and those representations don't happen in the most parts of the country. And so something like it was a dopey cop show, But like I come in and go, hey darling, wow, how are you doing tonight? Blah, blah, blah. And it's a man. I think that's actually a really great positive thing. And I just hope it, hope that upward swing continues. And it was sad because, ironically, one of the reasons why we got canned was that, there was a change at the head of the network, which was Les Moonves.
Yeah.
Because of...
It's a good change.
Yeah, yes. Because of that, then a new person, and there was a change at the studio. So there was a whole lot of, reasons that it didn't come back for another season. But I think 2 seasons is fine. But I just think it's actually the fact that it did come back at all, the fact it was made at all, and the fact that the other thing is that the fact I got zero, to me anyway, and I am on social media, I go out into the world, I do concerts all over the place. I got zero negative comeback about it. And I think in this country right now, with such negative and dangerous rhetoric happening, you expect that. I did expect that, and it didn't happen, and so that's a positive thing too.
That's great. What, having gone from, in film especially, kind of smaller independent films, and then also doing big kind of tentpole.
You keep saying tentpole.
Studio fare.
You keep saying tentpole.
I don't know why. It's
I don't think it's
because you're a
Dr. Freud.
tentpole international star. That's why.
I think it's dirty.
So I won't say tentpole again.
Please don't let me stop you.
You're gonna make me blush. Between doing 2 very different kinds of movies, I think you did Spy Kids, you did Spice World, and then you've made films. Thank you. And then you've made films like The Anniversary Party, and films that have a very different scale.
Mm-hmm.
What are the kind of key differences in terms of the actual making of them? How do the sets feel different? What's the whole experience like?
Well, usually, the smaller ones are more fun. I mean, that's not always true. Spice World was a lot of fun. But, the studio ones, like the X-Men one I did, there's so much more at stake. There's so much more money at stake. And it's much more of this lumbering machine. Also, those special effects ones take much longer. But really, I suppose it's... sometimes it can be both, like on Spy Kids. That's a long time ago, but we didn't know it was going to be Spy Kids when we made it. It was just this sort of dopey little. It was Robert Rodriguez's first sort of foray into family films, and it was just a little thing. And I remember I said to everyone, "Oh, I'm going to make this film with Robert Rodriguez," and they were like, "Wow, where is it?" I went, "Texas." They were like, "Oh," and then I went. And they went, "Where in Texas?" And I went, "Austin." They went, "Oh," like that. And so I went. I loved Austin, but none of us knew it was going to be like that. So it felt like a smallish film with that kind of same sort of community, of people all wanting to be there and having fun. And it was like the thing I really liked about it was it had, it was a big kids films. It had no guns. It's actually kind of timeless as well. It's like a sort of fairy tale kind of film that reminds me of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something in my childhood. And it's interesting how a film like that can keep resonating throughout. It's 20 years nearly since we made it, maybe in a couple of years. And it's really lovely to me because young adults see me as, I was on this thing I just did in Albuquerque. Young adults see me as oh my God, it's Mr. Floop, And and they say things like, "Oh, I grew up watching you," which is kind of menacing, I think. But and this guy a couple of weeks ago, I could tell he was really, you can tell when people want to say something but they're too shy. And he was on the crew of this thing I was shooting, and he said one time I was coming back from my trailer and he was going to the loo or something, and so he had me on his own, and he went, "Alan, I just want to tell you, you touched me a lot in my childhood." I was like, "Oh, keep that to yourself." But it's a really, that's a really magical, aside from that, that's mostly a really magical thing that from a certain age onwards, or downwards, I suppose, because that film is still watched by kids now. That's what I really love about it. It hasn't sort of dated in that way. So that's really nice. And, but usually on those little films, it's usually a lot to do with the budget. You know, you're there, you realize everyone is there because they really want to make that film. They're not necessarily there for a paycheck. But I think that's fair enough. You know, I think sometimes you do things, I do things for the money, just so I can then do other things that wouldn't. And also, if I wasn't, you know, at a certain level of fame, maybe I can sometimes get things made, occasionally, little films. And that's really good. That's why I also think it's important to keep your toe in the big commercial stuff.
One thing about you is that you have worked with kind of everyone, and I feel like you know everyone. And I wonder if we could do a little Alan Cumming story hour with some of the people that you've worked with, or just give us their essence, if you would.
All right.
So I'm going to run through some of your past colleagues and friends. Let's start with Whoopi Goldberg.
Whoopi, well, the funniest thing about Whoopi and I was that when I first met her, I was doing cabaret on Broadway, and I was overwhelmed. Oh, thank you. I did it. I did it twice. I did it again fairly recently, but I did it in 1998, and that's when I first came to New York, and that's when my struggling as a young actor. But I was really overwhelmed by it. We're in previews, and everyone was coming backstage and going, your life's going to change. And I was like, what? And I was alone in this new city. I didn't quite understand what it was all about. And I used to go into the shower after to get all my makeup off and just cry. I thought it was a good thing to do. It was a lot of stress, a lot of, and so I would cry in the shower. Nobody could hear. And I remember one time I was crying in the shower, and I knew that Whoopi was in the audience because I'd seen her, because I would go through the audience. And she was banging on the door, because I'd taken so long in the shower. She goes, I want to meet this guy. So Whoopi Goldberg's banging on the shower, and I'm inside going, And then years later, she was, in the first season of Instinct, she played my editor, of my book editor. So I was able to tell her that she'd made me cry.
Do you have any good stories about Dame Helen Mirren?
I do. So, well, because I used to tell the one about Crocs. Because I did a movie with her in Hawaii, and one time we were doing. There was every time we moved to a different island or different part of Hawaii, there was all these blessings. We had to someone had to come and bless us, and it was kind of boring, to be honest. We're all waiting around, and so there was one time we're having a drink at a blessing. And I had Crocs on, and I love Crocs. And she was just like, oh, you're wearing Crocs? I was like, uh-huh. I said, I think they're really colourful and practical, and I just don't understand why it's acceptable in society for people to hate them. I think it's a really interesting thing, a sheep-like quality that we all seem to indulge in, where we choose something that we're allowed to hate, and we hate it. That's why I wear Crocs as well, as a protest. And she went, oh, that's a really interesting concept. They're still ugly. And so then I was like, all right. And so then I went away on a gap back home, and then I came back, and we were always in this, I don't know if you've seen that film, it's The Tempest, and it was every bit of volcanic, awful thing to walk on, we shot on. And I was in this sort of little forest somewhere, and all of a sudden, from the trailer came Helen. She said, Alan. And I was like, oh, she's missed me, hello. And she went, I just got to tell you, my feet were sore from my flip-flops, and I went and bought some Crocs, and now I love them, I have 3 pairs. So I changed her. I turned her onto Crocs. But another thing I did with her was I did this thing called Remember That Time, a little sort of, 5-minute little digital thing, where I would get people, and they would say, iconic things they'd done. I would say, remember that time, like when Jason Biggs put his penis inside an apple pie and blah, blah, blah. And here's Jason Biggs to tell us all about it. So that was what the show was about, a little thing. And so Helen's one, I was talking about the fact that Helen had showed her boobs so much in her career. That was her. I said, remember the time Helen Mirren showed her boobs? Which time? And anyway, we started talking, and she went, and there was a little, the crew, there was a couple of cameras, and she went, what are some other words for boobs? And the whole place was like, everyone started going, rack, tits, but everyone started shouting out other names for boobs, and I was like, what's going on here? And eventually she went, I call mine pleasure pillows. It's totally true.
All right, you set a high bar. Tell me if you have any stories about Cher, who you worked with in burlesque.
Well, my favorite thing about Cher is it's not really that funny a story, but the first time we met, we just talked about olives. We just because there was a party.
It's so weird and specific.
I know, but so there was a part. Stanley Tucci had been nominated for an Oscar for that scary film, and so they had a little party on the set with sort of champagne and olives and snacks, and I'd be there for my fitting or something, and they said, "Oh, have you have you met blah blah?" I went, "Oh, hi Stanley, congratulations. Have you met Cher?" I was like, "No, I haven't." So and then someone started speaking, so we started together, and we'd sort of had a wee drink, and we sort of like take an olive, and she goes, "Those are delicious, aren't they?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Do you like calamati?" I was like, "I do actually. I'm a big fan. Not many people like them." She goes, "I like the ones with the..." And then we started going on and on and on and on about olives. So every time I think of Cher, I just think of olives, and also the drink that she likes is that drink that it's sort of like a liqueur. I can't remember the name of it, but it comes in a velvet bag.
Oh.
Do you know that thing I mean?
No.
But it was just, she was, what? Chambord. I think, yes, that's it. It comes in a little velvet bag with a string, a ribbon. And she was saying, she was kind of embarrassed. I said, "You're supposed to be a rock and roll chick. You'd be like having bourbon or something." And she goes, "I know, but I like the little velvet bag." She was like she's such a big girl.
And then what about Oprah? Has Oprah shaped or informed your life in any way?
Yes.
Like so many of us.
Like us all, of course. But my book I wrote after Not My Father's Son is called You Gotta Get Bigger Dreams. It was a book of photographs and stories. And the title story is because of Oprah. You Gotta Get Bigger Dreams is something she said. So I have a friend called Eddie who, just as remember when we were about to come on, I was on the phone, I was laughing.
Yeah.
It was because
Alan was on the phone literally as I was walking out on stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
My friend Eddie, so he's nuts and he's obsessed with pop culture. He works he works for The Daily. Do you know that? The Daily?
Yeah.
And it's like a poppy fashion thing. And is obsessed with Oprah. And he used to be my assistant years and years and years and years ago. And so I kind of, joke with him about Oprah. I would sometimes say those, your mama jokes, and I would change it to Oprah just to make him angry. Anyway, but just right now, for example, he was so excited because Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, which is this big organization that they raise all money from shows on Broadway and everything, and then they give lots of money out to various people. It's a really great organization. And every year they have a Christmas holiday ornament of like a legendary Broadway performer made into an ornament. And this year it was supposed to be me. They said, would you like to be this year's Broadway ornament? And I'd be me as the MC in Cabaret, as you could hang on your tree. I was like, of course I would.
That's fully iconic.
And I remember it was more than a year ago they said yes. And then I suddenly thought, oh, it's supposed to be this year, and Eddie will go nuts because he buys them all and he's got them all and he has a tree trimming thing. So I looked into it a couple of weeks ago and they said, oh, we're so sorry, we had a delay in the factory or something. It's going to be next year, it's you. And so I said to him, Eddie, I'm so sorry, you're not being able to hang me as an ornament on your tree. And he just said to me, I heard actually, and the thing is, because it was not you, there's going to be a re-release of Angela Lansbury. Showbiz. So anyway, so Oprah, so anyway, basically the story is, which is a long story I wrote in this book. I was invited to an event where Oprah was being honored. I took Eddie as my date because I knew that would make his life. But I'd said to him, do not embarrass me. I'm not going to take you. He goes, I want a photo. I said, you might not get a photo, Eddie, okay? And I am not going up to Oprah and asking her. You know when you go out with me and people come up and ask for a photo when we're having dinner and it really pisses you off? And he goes, yeah, I understand what you mean. I still want a photo with Oprah, though. And so we go to this thing, and loads of stuff happens. I nearly kill this old man by... Anyway, you read the book, but it's just a very... David Bowie it happens in it. And
big night.
It's a big night. Then we're at this table, we've got nice people at the table, and there's a sort of central table with Oprah and Steven Spielberg and everything. It's this huge... It's like Barbara Walters is thinking it. Ishtak Perlman's playing the violin. It's crazy like that. And at one point, Barbara Walters goes, and now we're going to have a break, and afterwards, Oprah. And we're all like, ah. And so there's sort of everyone gets up to table hop, and I'm kind of trying to, zoom in on Oprah. Because I've got this, I brought a special camera to sort of at least get a photo of her. And then she starts to stand up, and I'm kind of, and Eddie's saying, I'll stand in the front. And she's miles away. And maybe I was like, I don't think I can do the two focus things like this. So anyway, I realized through the camera, I see her walking towards us, and I realize that we are near the loos, the toilets. And I think, well, first of all, Oprah goes to the loo. Who knew? And then she's going to come right by us. And I'm like, Eddie, she's going to come right, oh my God, she's going to come right by here. It could happen. So, and I'm trying to fiddle the thing back, and I'm trying to do this on. I hear, Oprah comes up, and I hear Eddie, sounding like a little choir boy, go, Oprah, may I have a photo with you? It would be my dream. And Oprah said, you got to get bigger dreams. And I took the picture. I snapped a picture, and it's a terrible picture. It's although it's brilliant as well, because it's Oprah, half of Oprah's face like this. Completely in focus, looking absolutely beatific. And then over here, Eddie's full face, but completely blurry, going... And it was perfect for that actual moment. So that book came out, I told that story quite a lot. Then, about a year ago, I was at this thing, and I sit down, and my name's there, and I look over, and the next name tag says Oprah, and I'm sitting next to Oprah at dinner. So we get chatting, and she knew about the book and things, and so we get chatting, and she's really amazing, of course, and she chatted about that, and I told her the story again, and she went, I hope Eddie didn't think that, because initially when she said that, I went, did Oprah just diss you? And she went, I was trying to say to Eddie, that she needs to get, and I was, I understand what you're saying, Oprah, I get it, I don't think he thought that. And she said, let's do a video for Eddie. And I was like, this is going to be, Eddie might die, you know what I mean? So I do, hey Eddie, I'm just here at dinner with a friend who's got a message for you. And I turn over, she goes, Eddie, I just want to say that when I said you got to get bigger dreams, what I meant was you need to lean in. She did all the Oprah language, leaning in. And said this whole thing about how it wasn't a negative thing, it's just that she wanted him to have dreams that were better than just a mere person. And it was obviously gorgeous and Oprah-like. And then I was like, thanks so much, Oprah. I went, I've just got to go to the loo. So I went to the loo and immediately sent it to Eddie. And it was just, when you can do something, like you can do something for someone that is such a huge thing in their life. Like it's one of the most cherished things in Eddie's life, that message from Oprah. And so it should be. It's his idol, and she was actually taking the time to thingy to him. But it's an incredible thing that I was just next to dinner, but I thought it was amazing, and that she actually wanted to do that. So I'm all for Oprah.
Applause. Thank you for Oprah. Come on.
He's asking about when you're an actor and you have times when you're not working, and how you kind of stay positive and how you deal with that, and if I've experienced that. I haven't experienced that, but that's another reason why actors hate me. But I think one of the reasons why I haven't experienced, maybe worse, I've done things that I've hated doing, and I've had to do them for a long time. I think that's comparable, and how you keep your spirit up when you're doing something that you feel is not good, and you're not good in it, or it's not a good piece, and it could be so much better, and it's not. That to me is very, very demoralizing. But what I would say to you in terms of the question you asked, and one of the reasons why I haven't experienced that is because I make a lot of my own work. I have, like books, or I do concerts, I've written films, I've done things, and it's not because, it's just what I like, but I think it's a really useful thing to do, even if you don't, go on an international concert tour, just to actually have the time to, because when you don't act, you don't get to practice your job, and that's the worst thing about it. It's one of these things, you can only get better at it by doing it, and if you're not doing it, you can't get better. So I would suggest, both as a thing for your spirit, and as a thing for your craft and your storytelling skills, to just do stuff, write, just even get together with other people and tell stories, or just try and do something that's not just you waiting for the phone to ring. Because then I think you put too much onus on other people letting you do something, whereas it's something that you can do anytime you like, but on your terms. Right.
We have a question over here.
So I'm a performing arts major who's also, this is my first time in America and I just moved here. And you were talking about how when actors ask directors what our motivations are supposed to be, that we are spineless twits. And I do agree to some extent. And I would just love for you to elaborate on that because it's such an interesting point. We are taught to ask all of those questions.
Well, I mean, I think obviously it should be a dialogue, but why I said that was because I just don't think you should give all of the power to someone else. I think you should have made decisions about, you're not just an empty vessel, do you know what I mean? There's a reason you're interpreting this a character. And I think you should make decisions and have ideas about that. And the idea that, you know, I think, especially on film, what I hate is when people say, can you go over there because that's where we're lit? And we won't have to move the cameras and blah, blah, blah. And people go, oh, I really don't feel like I would like to move over there. And you think, move there. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a close-up anyway. And that kind of thing really pisses me off. And it's another pet peeve. And I just think it should be, because also that, I just don't feel, you haven't really made a decision about that. You're just saying that to be difficult or to sort of show your power. And so I just think that, but that's a different thing. I think what you're talking about is I just think you need to not go into a decision with a director where you think they know all the answers and I'm just this person who's they're going to fill me up with, with their thoughts, and then I'm going to spew that out. You're there as an interpreter of someone's text, and you're being guided by that person, but you've got to have much more, you've got to be active in it and not passive. Still got it.
I think that was a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much to the SCAD Savannah Film Festival for having us, and thank you, Alan Cumming, for being with us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks, Sam.